The small hand trembled as it reached into the carefully packed lunch bag, pulling out a peanut butter and jelly sandwich cut into perfect triangles. 7-year-old Ethan Mitchell had been saving half of his lunch every day for 3 weeks, but not for the reason his teacher Mrs. Johnson might have expected. While other children played on the playground during recess, Ethan would quietly slip away to the back corner of the school building, where he knew Jayden Thompson would be sitting alone, his stomach growling audibly in the silence. Jayden had been Ethan's tormentor since the first day of 2nd grade at Lincoln Elementary School. Every morning brought a new humiliation: knocked over backpacks, crumpled homework papers, whispered taunts about Ethan's thick glasses and the way he stumbled over words when he got nervous. The other children had learned to give Jayden a wide berth, his reputation for angry outbursts preceding him wherever he went. Teachers spoke about him in hushed tones, using words like troubled and difficult circumstances, but to Ethan, Jayden was simply the boy who made every school day feel like navigating a minefield. The first time Ethan noticed Jayden wasn't eating lunch was purely by accident. He had been hurrying to the bathroom, trying to avoid the cafeteria where Jayden usually cornered him, when he glimpsed a familiar figure hunched against the brick wall behind the gymnasium. Jayden sat with his knees drawn up to his chest, staring at the ground while other children's laughter echoed from the playground. His lunch tray was nowhere to be seen, and Ethan realized with a start that in all the weeks of school, he had never actually seen Jayden eat anything. That night, Ethan lay in his comfortable bed in his family's cozy ranch-style home in suburban Ohio, thinking about Jayden sitting alone and hungry. His mom had made his favorite dinner, homemade mac and cheese with green beans from their backyard garden, and his dad had helped him with his spelling words at the kitchen table while his little sister Emma played with her dolls nearby. The contrast wasn't lost on him. While Ethan went to sleep with a full belly and parents who read him bedtime stories, Jayden's world seemed cold and empty. The bullying continued, perhaps even intensified. Jayden seemed angry at everything and everyone, his fists clenched more often than not, his voice sharp with a bitterness that seemed too heavy for such small shoulders. When Ethan tried to hand in his science project about the solar system, Jayden accidentally bumped into him, sending the carefully constructed model crashing to the classroom floor. When Ethan raised his hand to answer questions about their weekly spelling test, Jayden would make faces behind Mrs. Johnson's back, causing other children to giggle and making Ethan's cheeks burn with embarrassment. But something had shifted inside Ethan. Each cruel action from Jayden only strengthened his resolve to continue his secret mission. Every day at lunch, he would carefully divide his meal, wrapping half in the extra napkins his mom always packed in his Spider-Man lunchbox. He learned Jayden's patterns, discovered that the boy always retreated to the same spot behind the gymnasium, always sat in the exact same position with his back against the wall as if protecting himself from invisible threats. The first time Ethan approached, Jayden's reaction was explosive. His eyes flashed with suspicion and rage as he scrambled to his feet, fists raised defensively. The sandwich Ethan had tentatively offered flew through the air, landing in the dirt as Jayden shouted words that made Ethan flinch. But Ethan didn't run. Instead, he simply picked up the sandwich, brushed off the dirt as best he could, and left it on the ground next to Jayden before walking away. The next day, he noticed the sandwich was gone. This ritual continued for weeks. Ethan would approach, Jayden would react with anger and rejection, and Ethan would quietly leave the food and retreat. Some days Jayden would throw the offerings away dramatically, making sure Ethan saw. Other days he would ignore them entirely, staring straight ahead as if Ethan didn't exist. But gradually, incrementally, the explosions became less violent. Jayden's shouts turned to muttered complaints, then to sullen silence, and finally, to a grudging acceptance that this strange boy with the thick glasses and gentle eyes wasn't going to be deterred. The breakthrough came on a particularly difficult day for both boys. Jayden had been sent to the principal's office twice already for disrupting class, his face red with frustration and shame. During recess, he had shoved another child so hard that the boy scraped his knee on the concrete, earning Jayden a lunch detention that meant eating alone in the classroom. Ethan, meanwhile, had overheard his parents talking in worried whispers the night before about his father's job and something called budget cuts that made his mother cry. When Ethan arrived at Jayden's usual spot that day, he found the other boy crying. Not the angry tears that sometimes accompanied his outbursts, but quiet, desperate sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep and broken inside him. Without hesitation, Ethan sat down beside Jayden, close enough to offer comfort but far enough to respect his space. He didn't say anything, didn't try to force conversation or ask questions. He simply unwrapped the sandwich he had brought and placed it between them, then took out the apple his mother had packed and set it down as well. For the first time in months, Jayden spoke without anger. His voice was small and cracked as he whispered about being hungry all the time, about his mother working 3 jobs and still not having enough money for groceries, about wearing the same clothes to school because they were the only ones that fit, about feeling angry at everyone because it was easier than admitting how scared and sad he felt all the time. Ethan listened with the wisdom that sometimes comes naturally to children who have been shown unconditional love. He didn't try to fix Jayden's problems or offer empty reassurances. Instead, he shared his own fears about his father's job and how worried it made him to see his parents stressed. He talked about feeling different because of his glasses and his speech difficulties, about wishing he was braver, about sometimes feeling lonely even when surrounded by people who cared about him. As they sat together sharing food and fears, something profound happened. The artificial barriers that had divided them began to crumble, revealing 2 7-year-old boys who were both struggling with problems too big for their small shoulders. Jayden's anger began to make sense to Ethan, not as cruelty but as a defense mechanism, a way of keeping the world at a distance before it could hurt him more than it already had. From that day forward, their relationship transformed completely. Jayden stopped bullying not just Ethan, but everyone. The change was gradual but unmistakable to those who knew what to look for. He began participating in class discussions, his intelligence finally able to shine through without the cloud of anger obscuring it. He started playing with other children during recess instead of hiding behind the gymnasium. Most remarkably, he began smiling, tentative at first, then with increasing frequency and genuine warmth. Ethan's parents noticed changes in their son too. He seemed more confident, more mature, carrying himself with the quiet dignity that comes from having done something truly meaningful. When they finally learned about their son's daily acts of kindness from Mrs. Johnson, who had been observing the transformation of both boys with amazement, they were proud but not entirely surprised. They had raised Ethan to see beyond surface behaviors to the human hearts underneath, to respond to cruelty with compassion rather than retaliation. The friendship that bloomed between Ethan and Jayden became legendary in their small elementary school. They were inseparable, each boy's strengths complementing the other's challenges. Ethan helped Jayden with reading comprehension, while Jayden shared his natural talent for art, teaching Ethan to draw with confidence and creativity. They ate lunch together every day, no longer in secret behind the gymnasium but openly in the cafeteria, welcoming other children to join their table. Jayden's academic performance improved dramatically once his basic needs were being met and he no longer expended all his energy on maintaining defensive walls. Ethan's confidence soared as he experienced the deep satisfaction that comes from making a real difference in another person's life. Their teacher marveled at how the classroom dynamic shifted as other children witnessed the power of genuine kindness to transform even the most challenging situations. The ripple effects of Ethan's simple act of sharing his lunch extended far beyond the 2 boys involved. Other children began looking out for classmates who seemed lonely or left out. Parents reported conversations at dinner tables about kindness and empathy, as their children processed what they had witnessed. Jayden's mother, when she learned about Ethan's daily gifts of food, broke down in grateful tears and began a lasting friendship with the Mitchell family that provided both practical support and emotional connection during difficult times. Years later, when both boys were in high school, Jayden would often reflect on that pivotal moment when someone chose to see past his anger to his pain, when a classmate he had tormented responded with persistent kindness instead of justified retaliation. Ethan's simple decision to share his lunch had quite literally changed the trajectory of Jayden's entire life, providing not just physical nourishment but the emotional sustenance that comes from knowing someone cares enough to keep trying, even when their efforts are initially rejected. The story of Ethan and Jayden reminds us that true kindness often requires persistence, that the people who seem least deserving of compassion may be the ones who need it most desperately. In a world that often responds to aggression with aggression, to hurt with hurt, Ethan chose a different path. He looked beyond Jayden's behavior to see a hungry, frightened child in need of help, and he responded with the kind of quiet heroism that has the power to change lives forever. This is the kind of story that needs to be shared, the kind of example that can inspire others to look for opportunities to show unexpected kindness in their own lives. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and share it with others who might need to hear this message of hope. Subscribe to Pure Kindness Stories for more inspiring tales that celebrate the very best of human nature, because in a world that can sometimes feel divided by differences, we need to remember that kindness truly is the universal language that connects us all. Sometimes the smallest acts of compassion create the biggest changes, and sometimes a simple peanut butter and jelly sandwich can restore someone's faith in the goodness of humanity.